Have you ever wondered why Jews and Arabs have been at war for thousands of years? Discover the origins and biblical insights into this ancient conflict that shapes the Middle East. Get ready to understand the biblical roots of the rivalry between Jews and Arabs, from the birth of Ishmael and Isaac to today's territorial conflicts. Welcome to the Fascinating Finds channel, where we reflect on the messages left by Jesus in the Bible. Abraham, considered the patriarch of the Hebrew people, received a powerful promise from God that his descendants would be numerous and blessed. However, this promise became the trigger for an eternal conflict between his descendants. Abraham, already old and without children to inherit the promise, was encouraged by his wife Sarah to conceive a son with her servant Hagar. Thus was born Ishmael, the firstborn. Later, when Sarah finally gave birth to Isaac, the son promised by God, problems began to arise. The rivalry between Ishmael and Isaac soon manifested itself, reflecting the dispute over the divine legacy and blessing. This story symbolizes the roots of the conflict between Jews and Arabs, two brothers with destinies marked by divine promises that triggered centuries of disagreements and territorial disputes. Ishmael, Abraham's firstborn son with Hagar, grew up in the desert, learning to survive in an arid and hostile environment. His relationship with his father was marked by a mixture of respect and distance, as he was not the son of promise. On the other hand, Isaac, born to Sarah in her old age, was raised with special care and extra attention. His bond with Abraham was closer and more affectionate, and he was considered the legitimate heir to divine blessings. These differences in upbringing and life circumstances contributed to the rivalry between Ishmael and Isaac from childhood. While Ishmael developed survival skills in the desert and became a natural leader among the Arab people, Isaac grew up in a more protected environment focused on Hebrew traditions. These different trajectories shaped the character and personalities of the two brothers, directly influencing the tensions that would arise between their descendants over the centuries. After Abraham's death, the relationship between the descendants of Ishmael and Isaac became even more strained. Isaac inherited the blessings and spiritual leadership of the Hebrew people, while Ishmael went his own way in the desert, leading Arab tribes in search of identity and territory. The divine promise that both would be the fathers of great nations was fulfilled over the centuries, as Isaac's descendants settled in Canaan and formed the 12 tribes of Israel, while Ishmael's children spread throughout the Arabian Peninsula. This geographical division reflected not only a territorial separation, but also a cultural and religious divergence between Jews and Arabs. While the Israelites developed their identity as God's chosen people, the Arabs maintained their nomadic traditions and worship of the ancient gods of the desert. This duality between sedentarism and nomadism, monotheism and polytheism contributed to the perpetuation of the rivalry between the two groups, each claiming its divine heritage as legitimate. Thus, the story of the descendants of Ishmael and Isaac is intertwined in a complex tangle of territorial disputes, cultural differences, and religious interpretations that have shaped the Middle East to the present day. After Abraham's death, the relationship between the descendants of Ishmael and Isaac became even more complex and conflictual. Isaac, as the heir to the divine promises, assumed the spiritual leadership of the Hebrews and settled in Canaan, where the 12 tribes of Israel flourished. Meanwhile, Ishmael led the Arab tribes into the desert, keeping alive the nomadic tradition and the worship of the ancient gods of the region. The geographical distance between the two groups accentuated their cultural and religious differences, creating an ever-widening gap between Jews and Arabs. The Israelites consolidated themselves as a sedentary people, focused on agriculture and the divine laws of Moses, while the Arabs maintained their nomadic identity based on hunting, herding, and ancestral religious practices. This dichotomy between urban civilization and nomadism directly influenced relations between the descendants of Isaac and Ishmael, fueling ancient resentments and territorial rivalries that echo to this day in the Middle East. After Abraham's death, the 12 tribes of Israel, descendants of Isaac, settled in Canaan, present-day Israel, under the leadership of prominent figures such as Moses and Joshua. Each tribe had its own identity and designated territory, forming a cohesive and organized community. The Israelites developed a society based on the divine laws received at Mount Sinai, known as the Ten Commandments, which regulated not only their relationship with God, but also social relations and justice among members of the community. The division of land among the tribes was made according to a divine plan, reflecting the promise made to Abraham and the fulfillment of the blessings upon his descendants. This tribal structure strengthened Hebrew identity and laid the foundation for the future Israelite monarchy, which would consolidate the political power of God's chosen people. With the rise of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the differences between Jews and Arabs took on new dimensions. Judaism established itself as a religion based on the Torah and the ancient traditions of the Hebrews, establishing Jerusalem as the spiritual center of the Jewish people. On the other hand, Christianity emerged as an offshoot of Judaism, proclaiming Jesus Christ as the long-awaited Messiah and expanding his message of salvation beyond ethnic boundaries. This new faith became an additional point of contention between Jews and Gentiles, sparking theological and political conflicts throughout history. Finally, Islam emerged with Muhammad, claiming lineage from Ishmael and establishing Mecca and Medina as centers of worship for Muslims. The rise of Islam brought a new perspective on the Abrahamic heritage, challenging Jewish claims to the Promised Land and claiming its own connection to God. These three great monotheistic religions share Abraham as their patriarch, but their divergent interpretations of the Holy Scriptures have fueled centuries of territorial and religious conflict in the Middle East. Jerusalem, the Holy City, has become the epicenter of millennia-old conflicts between Jews, Christians, and Muslims. For Jews, Jerusalem is the site of the Holy Temple, built by Solomon and the Western Wall, the last remnant of Herod's temple. For Christians, Jerusalem is where Jesus lived, preached, was crucified, and rose again, with the Church of the Holy Sepulchre being one of the holiest sites. For Muslims, Jerusalem is home to the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock, sites associated with Muhammad's life and ascension into heaven. This overlapping of sacred meanings has made Jerusalem a spiritual and territorial battleground throughout history, with each religious group claiming sovereignty over the city and its holy sites. Disputes over ownership of Jerusalem reflect not only political and territorial issues, but also deeply held beliefs about the divine connection to the Holy Land. The struggle for control of Jerusalem is one of the most sensitive points in the conflict between Jews and Arabs, symbolizing not only a battle for territory, but also a war for the spiritual soul of the Middle East. Despite doctrinal differences and territorial disputes, the scriptures of both traditions share a message of hope and reconciliation between Jews and Arabs. The promise of a time when swords will be beaten into plowshares is echoed in both the prophecies of the book of Isaiah and the Quranic teachings on mercy and forgiveness. This shared vision of a peaceful future, though often drowned out by the noise of conflict, remains a beacon of hope for those seeking a lasting solution to the ancient rivalry. The belief in the possibility of reconciliation between the descendants of Isaac and Ishmael, even in the face of the deep scars of the past, is a powerful reminder of the human potential to overcome differences and build bridges of mutual understanding. While the voices of hatred continue to echo, the seed of peace planted in the sacred scriptures awaits the right moment to blossom and unite those who have been divided for so long. After centuries of conflict and misunderstanding between Jews and Arabs, the search for peace has become an urgent and pressing need. The history of rivalry and territorial disputes has left deep scars on both communities, but it has also opened the way for reflections on the importance of reconciliation and intercultural dialogue. Peace between Jews and Arabs is not just a utopian dream, but a goal that can be achieved through mutual recognition, compassion, and forgiveness. It is essential to remember that behind ethnic, religious, and political differences, there are human beings with similar yearnings for security, dignity, and peaceful coexistence. The search for peace requires the courage to overcome deep-rooted prejudices, the willingness to listen to the other side of the story, and the determination to build bridges of understanding. May the desire for peace inspire concrete actions towards a future where Jews and Arabs can live side by side in harmony, respecting their cultural and religious differences in a spirit of mutual cooperation. The complex history between Jews and Arabs is a living testament to the tensions, challenges, and opportunities for growth that arise when cultures, traditions, and destinies intertwine over centuries. Each chapter of this epic narrative reveals profound nuances of the human condition, from the search for identity and belonging to the conflicts generated by competition for scarce resources. The rivalry between Jews and Arabs is not simply a question of territory or faith, but a reflection of the complexities of human nature, with its noble aspirations and its inevitable weaknesses. Faced with this multifaceted scenario, mutual understanding, open dialogue, and the willingness to recognize the humanity in others become non-negotiable moral imperatives. May the millennia-long history between Jews and Arabs inspire us not only to reflect on the shadows of the past, but also to envision a future where mutual respect, fraternal cooperation, and the pursuit of peace are the pillars of a new era of global understanding. Check out the Bible Handbook to learn more about biblical events chronologically. Access the link in the description or in the first pinned comment. The conflict between Jews and Arabs is ancient, but still carries the hope of future reconciliation. May we continue to seek peace inspired by divine teachings.